Building a bog filter is one of the easiest DIY pond filters anyone can create. A bog filter is cheap to build, efficient to run, and easy to maintain. Over the years, I've shown different designs that I've used and tested on my ponds, and over that time, one of the most common questions I get is about the breather pipe. So in today's video, I want to talk about the breather pipe, why it's necessary, how you add one, and some other opportunities for that extra water that comes out of the breather pipe. But if you don't already know me, my name is Kev, and the aim of my channel is to help people build and maintain a pond without spending a fortune. So if that sounds like something that interests you, you might like to subscribe and visit my website ozponds.com. When building a bog filter, my preference is to have the water move up through the filter. This is commonly called an upflow filter. I have created a video on why I prefer this method, so rather than rehash all that in this video, I'll put a link to that video in the description. So the way I construct my bog filters, the water is pumped into the base of the filter, and the filter's overflow is above the water level inside the pond. So the water's pumped into the base, it rises up through the rock, pebble and plant roots, and then it overflows back into the pond, and round it goes. But what this means is that if the water is shut off, say during a power outage, the water inside the bog filter will siphon out through the pump and back into the pond. And this is where people always ask, well, why not just use a check valve or a no return valve? And you can, but in the past I've used check valves and 2 out of 3 have failed. But if we add a simple breather pipe up the top as the water enters the filter, a siphon cannot start. The moment the pump is shut off, air is sucked in through the hole and the siphon is stopped. And this can't fail. But it then starts off the next question. Well, won't water just shoot out the breather hole and not go down into the base of the filter? So I like to tee off my breather hole, and the water prefers travelling straight down into the filter. But depending on the flow rate and how much gunk is built up inside the filter, it is possible that water will want to exit via the breather hole. There's a couple of solutions to this. One, add a valve so you can regulate how much water escapes through the breather hole. This can be useful if you want to oversize your pump in relation to the requirements of the bog filter. Number 2 is you can add an elbow fitting, and if necessary, a vertical piece of pipe. If the opening is higher than the overflow back to the pond, no water will exit the breather pipe. So that covers the 2 most common questions I get asked. Another one is, can I just bring the water in at the base rather than pipe it up over to reach the base? And you can, but now you need to either fully rely on a check or no return valve, or you need to bring the pipe work up, add the breather hole, and go back down inside the filter, and that's fine if you have the room for it. And that's probably a decent option on more formal ponds, where you want to hide the pipe work. Most of my ponds are made to look natural, so hiding the pipework is easy, and the bog filter doesn't even look like a filter. And speaking on that, I've created a few different videos on plumbing the bog filter, things like connecting it to the pump, skimmer, etc. So I'll link that in the description, and I also have some on hiding the plumbing, so I'll link them also. Now another thing some people wonder is, well, what's the big deal if the filter siphons back to the pond? A bog filter is going to accumulate a fair amount of sediment, hence why I like to design them with an easy method of flushing. But if you allow the filter to siphon back to the pond, that gunk's going to end up back in the pond, and that defeats part of the purpose of the bog filter. The other purpose of the filter is to provide plenty of surface area for nitrifying bacteria. These bacteria require a wet surface, and if the filter were to drain and dry out, there goes the bacteria. Well, at least that's what I've always been taught. But I assume they must be able to stay dried out because there are bacteria products sold in powder form, or maybe the powder's a food source. I'm really not sure. So it looks like that's something else I'm going to need to investigate. But basically, that's the 2 reasons why we don't want the filter to siphon back into the pond. So now let's take a look at some options for the breather hole if you wanted to oversize the pump for the filter. And that probably leads to a few questions like, why would I want a bigger pump? There are a few advantages to having more flow. like you have the ability to introduce more air exchange through water movement, which increases dissolved oxygen within the pond. More dissolved oxygen allows the bacteria to process waste more efficiently. And having more flow gives you more creative freedom with streams and waterfalls. You could also divert excess flow to a dedicated filter for solid capture. This is especially important if you know that the accumulation of waste inside the pond is something that's going to bother you. On my solar system, the addition of the breather pipe or hole was essential as the pump is shutting off often. But on that system I have two small streams, and the one on the right has no dedicated filter, just the hose discharging water to the top of the stream. That hose is teed off the main plumbing line that takes water from the pump to the filter, and because when the pump shuts off that hose will suck in air, the siphon is prevented and the filter keeps all its water. That's just one example, and there's many creative things you can do with the breather pipe and the excess water. And if you want to learn more about the way I size my filters, pumps, etc., you might be interested in my PDF that has all the formulas I use when designing and building my ponds. And that's available on my website, ozponds.com. I'll put a link in the description. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. If it was, feel free to tickle the thumbs up button. And as always, thanks for watching. See ya.